fellow musicians of the Albuquerque Youth Orchestra. It was so nice to share with you some of my practice tips, and I'm making a video to recap what was covered in the actual session. There were lots discussed, so I'm happy to go over the important information. As there will be many times we would be preparing for our orchestra auditions, here is the must-do items in order to get into a good preparation habit. First and foremost, find a recording and listen. Listen to at least 3 recordings. When we are given excerpts, most of the time we only get the portion of the sheet music that has just the part that we are supposed to play. It's difficult to understand the context of what's happening around this very excerpt you're going to be learning. Also, you will see the music for your own part, but it's almost impossible to know what's going on in the rest of the orchestra. We basically don't have much information to start thinking about how to make sense with this music. So when we listen to the recordings, we can learn about the mood, the tempo, the phrasing, and much more. We would learn so much by listening, and we won't know what we're missing until we start to listen. I would make a tempo chart. Different recordings would have different tempos, of course, but I would definitely be able to get an idea of a general tempo. I would also listen for the phrasing and how inside of a phrase is being shaped. Next, I would try to sing along with the recording. Sure, I'm not going to be able to sing perfectly, but I like internalizing the music that I need to play, and sometimes singing it is the quickest and the best way. And if the excerpt doesn't come along with execution bowings, I would try to take it down from one of the recordings, as if taking down a dictation. Different recordings would have different ways, but it's a great way to get started. I cannot stress enough the importance of practicing with a metronome with the excerpts. I would start slowly, of course, and then gradually go up in tempo. And in some cases, I would also practice slightly above the tempo so that when I play in the real tempo, it almost feels easy in the end, and that gives me a sense of control. In learning excerpts for an audition, we absolutely have no room for error with dynamics and rhythm. We have to take a note of every marking, and if there are terms printed that we don't know the meaning of, well, it's easy enough to look it up. But we must find out what it means. In looking at your excerpts, I saw that good vibrato would be essential throughout, so I would like to begin with a little talk about vibrato. What is vibrato? What are the elements of vibrato we can describe it with? Well, there is frequency, width, and ping. Frequency is about the speed, how fast or slow the vibrato is. The width is how wide or narrow the vibrato is. And the ping is about energy. Is it growing or more clear? How do you vibrate? We traditionally have arm, wrist, or finger vibrato, But in reality, we don't have an exclusively arm, an exclusively wrist, or an exclusively finger vibrato. It's always a combination of the entire arm, but that we can talk about predominantly an arm, or predominantly a wrist, or predominantly a finger vibrato. Here's some general great policies about vibrato. Number 1, practice your vibrato. I practice it every day, and I think it helps. Also, vibrate consistently, and particularly when changing notes, shifting, changing the bow, or crossing the strings. Don't let your hand or fingers take control of your vibrato. You need to be in control. You need to decide when not to vibrate. And unless you decide not to vibrate, do vibrate. So how do we practice vibrato to achieve this super quality? I take my metronome to 66 a quarter, and I start with 8-beat strokes, starting from having very slow and timed vibrato in 2s, then 3s, then 4s, 5s, and then so forth, like this. I normally start my vibrato exercise on the 3rd position with my 2nd finger, followed by the 3rd, the 4th, and the 1st. It doesn't take long to do this, but it helps a lot. So please do it. We now go on to the Scheherazade from the Young Prince and the Young Princess. The mood? It's the most romantic, so beautiful and tender and sweet, so out of this world. And the rhythm? The 3rd bar on the 2nd line is glaring at me. Grace notes can confuse the rhythm, though they aren't supposed to. In order to first understand the musical line and rhythm, I practice without the grace notes. Once the rhythm and shape are clear, I can put back these decorative grace notes. Also, in measures 1 and 2, let's pay attention to more rhythm. A dotted 8th, followed by a 16th, is exactly that. It's not simply long followed by a short stroke. Subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. We should not approximate rhythm. The 2nd bar, that is a dotted quarter and an 8th. 8 16th go into it. Finally, I need to be able to play this excerpt in piano and with good sound. my friend Mei from Philadelphia is paying us a video visit. She will help us think together about the excerpt we have from Brahms' Second Symphony. This is a beautiful long phrase. Since bowings in the printed music, however, may not be possible in this case, we need to come up with a bowing that would help us give a good shape to the phrase and to help us with our dynamics. Starting up bow allows us for a soft and sweet entry into the phrase. 2 bows are actually needed in the first 2 bars in order to sustain the phrase. The 4th bar lands with the highest note of the phrase, which is like a climax, and it needs to be slightly emphasized, so landing it on a down bow does make sense. This bowing also helps with the dynamics written for measures 314 and 315. In the next excerpt, of course, we choose again the bowings that help us to sustain our long phrases. But here, I point out also the necessity to plan our bow usage. Notice how on the down bow in 353 and 354, Mei does not use the whole bow, which helps her not to have to use too much bow on the next up bow stroke in order to get to the frog for a whole bow in measure 355. Throughout the entire excerpt, she sustains the lines beautifully by keeping a very even weight on her right arm all the time. Let's listen. And here is my friend Will. He has a special message for the bassists.
Hello, my name is Will Cravey. I'm a bass player in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and Midori has asked me to share this wonderful slow movement from Bach's Second Violin Concerto. Some of the most pertinent points of this piece is to really get the character, this very kind of sotto voce, soft but very intense and very beautiful ostinato underpinning. Ostinato being a repeated figure that happens again and again in different tonalities, and showing the difference in the tonalities. So first showing a little bit of effort and a little bit of release on the first 2 notes. So we have a nice, beautiful stress and release. Then we have quiet notes that follow. we need to really take care to not accent the up bow. And make sure da-dee-dum, dee-da-dum. Notice this interval's wider, so we don't stress it as much. But we do use these bass notes to create a crescendo. We can lead da-dee-dum, dee-da-dum, and then go away. Dum, bum, bum. I think this music is really touching and really beautiful if we show the jumps and intervals. It's very easy to play, but if we leave this very soft, and then really stress the appoggiatura and go away, kind of melt off away, I think this is really what gives this music the beauty and character. I think the main thing to focus on is the resonance provided by the left hand, the release that we can give in the right hand, and then I also cheat. I very softly dampen the note with the higher finger in the left hand. This is one of the most stunning pieces of music that we have, and has just some of the most heartfelt and just absolutely captivating interplay between a single held note in the violin and our bass line that just repeats and kind of shifts and folds. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.